MyJBNOnline, an Urban Passport member.
For my people that don't get to see me, trying to remind you who you are, just like in Romans 3. See, we about to blow across the world just like a day that's breezy. This motivation for the people, and this classic Bible teaching say, hey, this for my people that don't get to see me, trying to remind you who you are, just like in Romans 3. See, we about to blow across the world just like a day that's breezy. This motivation for the people, and this classic Bible teaching, hey, motivation.
It was a monumental game for A&M and Tampa. It was a monumental game. Somebody had to lose, and thank God it was them this time.
We knew it was going to be a battle. Look at Jake Ave's record. 202 and 36, I think, some off-the-wall figures.
And nobody would play him because they didn't want to take a chance of getting beat. But the truth of it is,
over 46,000 tickets. Blacks were sitting in the east stands. Whites were sitting in the west stands. And the score wound up 34-28.
The only thing we proved that we wasn't inferior, that we were not inferior, and we were not afraid.
For one night, for 160 minutes, we was better than them.
In the beginning, there was nothing but darkness. Then with one beautiful bang, there was light. But with light came life. And with life came thought. And with thought came endless possibilities. Time and space are not infinite. And as such, the Creator has tasked me with a tremendous responsibility of destroying alternate universes. So I created a tournament where I allow beings from countless possibilities the chance to fight for their place in space and time. I am Alpha, and this is Versus.
The human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted Kever's voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KEAVERSVOICE.com. Kever's Voice, Kever's Voice, KeversVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
Are you hungry for authentic Caribbean food? Like jerk chicken, oxtail, red snapper, shrimp, tofu, and rasta pasta? Well, find your way over to Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta.
Them belly full, but we hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, open daily from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And on Friday and Saturday, we're open till 4 a.m. Come to Mango's and put some spice in your life.
So we've got a good thing going.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta. For more info or directions, call 404-698-3992 or log on to mangoscaribbeanrestaurant.com. For instant coupons, text MANGOS to 313131.
Tell your mama hungry, papa hungry, brother hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, authentic Caribbean cuisines.
Open up the door, tell your mama hungry.
The Cuvée Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation.
Yeah.
We also help to
I love my HBCUs and bomb. I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU and man. I hope my team they won, yeah. I hope my team they won, yeah. Man. I hope my team they won, I hope my team they won, yeah.
Workshops, training, and private coaching for individuals and companies looking to take things
there's a mouth, but if there's one time, I'ma do the damn, yeah. Dr. Ville, he know what he be talking about, Charles. They know what they be talking about, They compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know him like I know him, they wanna law, ball. So listen to the yes sir. These are lessons. You learn the day. They play, yeah. You gon' learn the day. They play. How they play, yeah. We represent that swag, that MEAC. And let me say, what's up to Tennessee, stay. In the ACC Sports Lab. Bill, Charles.
YT Production.
Should I start until he gets in?
Yeah.
I love my HBCU and Bond. I love it. I love my HBCU and man, I hope my team they won. Yeah. I hope my team they won. Yeah. Man, I hope my team they won. Yeah. I hope my team they won. Yeah. I tuned into the HBCU Sports Lab to see my team won a lot. If they lost, quiet as a mouse, but if they won, you tap. I'ma do the damn, yeah. Dr. Ville, he know what he be talking about, Charles. They know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know him like I know him, they wanna law, ball. So listen to the yes sir. These are lessons. You learn the day.
Podcast, a show that's covering and supporting HBCU diaspora, all things HBCU sports, from institutions large and small, from NAIA to NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture and HBCU athletic aesthetic. Facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Ville, along with my co-host, Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, as you see. Mike Washington's out on assignment. Hopefully he's doing okay with everybody dealing with the hurricanes in this area. We are filming from our home studios and sending a signal live to our KSWH 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper in the beautiful home of Texas Southern University in Houston, Texas. With that said, if you would, Charles, got some HBCU sports news of the day that you want to share. A lot of ways. I know it may be tough in the times going on. Prayers going out to the family. It seems like we just can't find a way to get things done in regards to changing the way we operate this country.
Sure.
All unfortunately, what's taking place with him and his family. Thankfully, prayers that it's not like anything seems at this point. It's hard to imagine how you survive that. Did want to get that on the table appropriately, but before we go any further, I wanted to wish everybody safety as they're dealing with this hurricane. Obviously, continued COVID-19 pandemic. By the way, in some people's mind, it seems like they've gotten too much back to normal, probably inappropriate. But with that said, let's get back to some HBCU sports news of the day. What do you have for us, Charles?
Sure thing, and this is news coming out today and from our friends at Black College Sports Network. They will be streaming all Florida Memorial athletic programs, which will consist of games as well as weekly programs centered around the coaches, players, band members of various other university programs. And this is a statement from President of JERICHO Broadcast Networks, Roy M. Evans II. I'm really excited about being able to partner with FMU as it holds a special place in my heart. It was the first college campus in HBCU that I ever visited, as my aunt, uncle, and my mother all attended this great university. And this is a statement from FMU Athletics Director Ernest T. Jones. Partnering with the Black College Sports Network will provide an enhanced viewing experience for all our fans and supporters. One we look forward to providing when our student athletes return to competition. So big news from Black College Sports Network. And we wanted to make sure that all precautions will be taken as they broadcast Florida Memorial this upcoming season, as they will take care of the broadcasters and make sure everything is done in a safe fashion.
Man, that's pretty hot. You know, all kidding aside, we know this producer a little bit, just a little bit.
Yes, indeed.
Roy Evans, but on a business note, in all seriousness, you can see why he put himself in a position to get that contract. And kudos to BCSN, the network, where we broadcast weekly, obviously, in partnership with K-Switch, 12:30 a.m. studio with the Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper. But just want to see, that's another reason why we say support black businesses, black institutions, wherever you can. We're out here producing content, creative content creation that delivers things from a perspective that you really can't get anywhere else. And certainly from a quality that we try to make sure you produce at the highest level possible. So kudos to Roy Evans, his group BCSN, which includes us in terms of the bigger package. But get out there, do production for Florida Memorial. I can see why they're excited, because they've been hot and heavy. And certainly doing it in the most safe fashions possible is extremely important. So wanted to give proper kudos in regards to what's going on there. With that, since we don't have Mike, we're going to get to go right back to you, Charles. You're going to get to show out and be big time a little more today.
No doubt about it. And this, unfortunately, on a somber note, this comes to us from Morgan State Athletics Department as they mourn the tragic loss of student athlete Jordan Cofield, who lost his life in a single vehicle motorcycle accident late Saturday night. Cofield was a junior wide receiver on the Morgan State football team and a key member of the track and field team. The Baltimore Newtown High School product ranked number 2 in the MEAC in kick return average last year, adding 10 receptions for 105 yards and a touchdown. In addition to that, he was also a tremendous student athlete. He's a business administration major and holding a 3.26 GPA as a member of the Dean's List and Athletic Directors Honor Roll. So I definitely want to send out our condolences to the Morgan State family and the Morgan State Athletics.
Yes, well done, appropriately done. It is always tough in regards to trying to figure out somebody so young loses their life. It just adds dimensions when we lose anybody. So we're looking through that. Please bear with us. I know my volume may be a little low as we're going through it. I think some of this has to do with the weather that's coming our way and things of that nature, the internet, things of that. But we're going to try to get through the show, continue to bring you the news of the day. So apologize in advance in regards to what that looked like. But we're going to work feverishly throughout the show to try to do that. But some of that might just be on this part. So with that, we'll get off the mic a little bit since mine is not on there. We'll probably get Charles to kind of push a little more of this today to try to help support that framework. With that, as we continue push through the HBCU news of the day. What else do you have for us, Charles?
Yeah, big news. North Carolina Central's Brian Mills, he was named to the Reese's Senior Bowl top 250 watch list. North Carolina Central senior cornerback Brian Mills, he is an NFL draft prospect. The Reese's Senior Bowl is considered the nation's most prestigious college all-star game as it annually serves as the first step of the NFL draft process. In the past 2 years, 93 players from the Reese's Senior Bowl have been selected in the NFL draft. So kudos to North Carolina Central's Brian Mills as he was named to the Reese's Senior Bowl watch list.
Man, they still doing all the Senior Bowl watch lists and all that?
Yeah, no.
I see MEAC coming out with preseason volleyball. I'm like, the season is over.
I kind of know.
You still give people their accolades. They still are seniors. They're still in school. So finding a way to get it done. So kudos for those groups getting it done in that manner, and especially kudos for those that are honored in getting that due dedication that they're supposed to be getting. So appropriately said, just want to say getting them done there with that in the nature going forward. With that, again, as we move forward, we have a dynamic interview we think we have for us. So stick with us. I'm going to surprise you a little bit there. So we have a hot one coming in, and we're going to do it from a different perspective. We're going to continue to give you some updates on football. But as we give you football, we're going to see if we can get some answers on basketball, because it's right around the corner more than what you think. And so there's starting to be some questions about what does basketball look like? How are we going to deal with basketball? We essentially know from HBCU sports, obviously Florida Memorial is showing what they're going to try to start out and do. But many of the other conference, if you would, that houses mostly HBCUs, some of them HBCUs exclusively, with the SWAC, MEAC, SIAC, CIAA, Gulf Coast Athletic Conference, obviously those football members, not a football conference operating member in the Gulf Coast Athletic Conference. They do have Edward Waters that has a football program, just to make sure that we shout them out. But just give you some updates there, how we're moving forward. What else do you have for us out there? You know, I'm going to sneak in a little bit there. No, I'll save this to later in the show, because we'll have our backing guest. He'll want to talk a little bit about this. So I'm going to dig in and go back to Charles and let him, since he's doing the wonderful job giving us updates, let us know what's going on.
You know, Mike and myself, we talked last week a little bit about the Chris Paul sneaker watch in terms of checking for the HBCUs that he's been wearing. So this past weekend, at least, we saw Hampton and we saw Alabama State brought out the Alabama State footwear for the Rockets the other night and got the victory. So shout out to Chris Paul. You know, he's definitely putting the HBCUs on the map with the footwear. So.
Yeah, that was the one I was going to look at. We'll bring that back up with Rob Calloway as he joins us near the end of the show. I know he spoke it up last week. He said it ain't going to be right unless Alabama State Hornets got some. I don't know, Charles. You might need to see if you got some of that magic, too.
Hey, I've been calling down Orlando. Yeah. I definitely want to see
without a doubt.
Definitely want to see, make sure that series goes just a little bit further so we can see a little bit more.
Chris Paul is bringing the HBCUs with the shoes in such a significant branding platform to give a voice to them is unique. You have people focused on basketball in general in terms of the pros, obviously continue to do homage to the Black Lives Matter, what's going on with the racial issues in this country. Him and the rest of the NBA, at least a lot of the players, are doing much to their credit as they try to muscle through this and adhere to their working conditions that they are in a lot of ways. And then obviously you had the Kobe Bryant with people having memory of him, and then Chris Paul. Not only did he continue to do what he does in terms of HBCUs, providing them a platform, and he's done a great job, I think, in terms of talking, as we said, that sporting HBCU diaspora, looking at multiple HBCUs, as we like to talk about them, in conference affiliation and various divisions. So he's NAIA all the way to NCAA, FCS Division I and Division II. All the conference associated have been represented. Non-conference major institutions in terms of the SWAC, MEAC, SIAC, and CIAA. So he's really done a great job of touching them all.
No doubt.
And I think we had the man of the hour. Oh, man, look at him, man. They done did a little work. He's coming on first class. Studio effect, man.
I like that.
We got a
That's
movie
nice.
creator. That looks good,
That's
Charles. Right. That looks really good, Dr. Charles McCullough.
I appreciate it. I have to send shouts out to my wife for getting it set up. She said she was tired of looking at the background, so she created this entire studio. So I appreciate it.
Make sure you let her know. I said she did a great job, and that doesn't amaze me one bit. I know as we met when both of y'all were at Texas Southern University, it makes sense that she said no more, Charles. You know, rub you in the right way. You know, I
there
let
you
you
go.
do your part. Now let
Right.
me do my part.
And she did. She did a great job. So she has me looking professional. So that's good.
So as we get into this, today's episode of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab is sponsored by THG LLC. THG Agency is a company that provides sporting and educational consulting and data analytics. With that, today's show will be a good one. We will be joined by SWAC Commissioner Dr. Charles McCullough in 2021 football spring football that has moved from the fall. And then we're going to get a little twist on this. We're going to get into men's and women's basketball as that is fast approaching. And everybody hasn't really had a chance to dig that much in basketball because football has been the sport of the day along with the rest of the fall sports. So we'll get a chance to dig in that a little more. So wanted to make sure that we appropriately brought Charles in to talk about these different components. And so we'll have a extremely delightful interview, I'd like to believe, in regards to that. Before we get started, let me say with the hurricanes coming down, COVID-19, everything that's taken around us, obviously, we just seen another recent event. I can't describe it any other way than that. But everything, what is going on with you and your family in the conference at this time? How are you doing?
Yeah, we're doing well. And as you know, my youngest son, Ashton, there is in Houston. So we're trying to get him a little further north or maybe northwest. Hopefully that the hurricane does take a turn and don't hit Houston. But clearly it's going to hit someone. So, our hearts go out. I heard Devin Wade on KTSU Saturday say 2020 is the gift that keeps on giving.
It really is. Yeah.
That's a pretty good synopsis. Another African-American male shot in the back, extremely tragic. From a conference office standpoint, I've gotten a lot of response from some of the Autonomy 5 conferences wanting to do things. I think the SEC really stepped up with the flag in the state of Mississippi. There's a lot going on. There's an undercurrent of racial, social, economic, just overall injustice. And a lot of this, people look at it as race, but it's also a money issue as well. You're not over-policed in River Oaks, whether you're white or black or Hispanic. If you're in River Oaks, you're not over-policed. So a lot of this is social economic. But I think that the HBCUs really have an opportunity to expand our reach and help this process of changing America. And I've said this before. I was talking to my father, and he was talking about it's worse than the 60s. I said, worse than the 60s, Daddy? Y'all was putting dogs on people and biting folks and, beating them and all of that. And then I thought about it. I was like, how many African-American males have been shot to death in America, in 2020 alone? So in a lot of instances, the rioting and picketing and the fight for social justice, there's a lot of similarities. And when you really look at it, it probably is worse now than what it was in 1960s. We've come a long way, but clearly we have a long way to go.
A great opening statement, and thank you for sharing such in-depth feelings, personal feelings in regards to what's going on. And appropriately, as you said, when you talk about time and with a lot of things progressing in a positive way, it does make it even tremendously more challenging and difficult when you think about that so much time, if you would, has passed, but there's still some issues that need to be taken care of. With that, let's get into some of the questions that a lot of people wanted to hear in terms of the Southwestern Athletic Conference, the SWAC. And let me just jump in here into this, and then we'll get Charles to get in with a chance to have some follow-up questions. But as you know, the SWAC announced the schedule for all 10 SWAC schools for the upcoming 2021 spring football season. Previously, there was the schedule including one non-conference open date for each team in the conference contest schedule each week beginning in week 1 when you talk about that framework. So much of this took place, I really wanted to get in and ask you, after the meeting that took place, and you got such positive feedback in so many different ways, because of the fact you were essentially the lone conference that went out there and actually put out a planned proposal of not only talking about postponing and moving to the spring, but how, to some degree, what that would look like. If you would, talk about a little bit how that all came together and why, more importantly, was that important to do that?
Well, quite frankly, we looked at it as an opportunity to make a decision. Do we want to follow or do we want to lead? In the Southwestern Athletic Conference, we're about leading. Hats off to Ashley Robinson, the chair of the Athletic Directors Committee. He brought the thought process and the proposal to say, hey, Jackson State, they invested the money. They were ready to play. They had the testing available. They had everything in place. So they were one of the institutions that said, we have invested from day one to kick off in the fall. When fall wasn't a reality, they were very clear, and Ashley was very clear and say, let's look at a path forward to the spring. So we embarked under this process, and it really came from a standpoint of, let's not just sit on our hands. We can do this, and we can do this efficiently. And I think it was only fair to our student athletes. Are we going to play, or are we not going to play? Let's make that decision. Let's put the plan out, and let's move forward. Not in my wildest dreams that I think we would be featured on, Get Up and Paul Feinbaum and Greeny and the whole crew chiming in. Not in a million years that I think, Sports Illustrated would pick it up, the New York Times, the Washington Post, higher issues in education picked it up, diverse issues in education picked it up. I talked to the LA Times. I mean, it just went on and on and on. And ultimately what it showed is the Southwestern Athletic Conference, we are leaders. We do think outside of the box. We can provide a footprint for the entire nation to move forward. I got a lot of calls when other conferences started to announce, hey, they copycat and SWAC. Well, we put it out there for them to boast about it. We thought it was a solid plan. We put the plan out, and fortunately for us, it made sense for us. And I think that's the other piece. We didn't have to wait on the NCAA. We didn't have to wait on other FCS institutions. We said SWAC brand is solid on its own. We're not participating in the FCS playoffs, so we don't have to wait on that. We're going to play a conference-only schedule. We're going to get some of our biggest games in. We're not going to wait. So let's put our own plan together. Let's do what's best for the SWAC for a change. Let's not do what's best for everybody else. We followed that path. We followed that plan, and we landed. And then 3 weeks later, we put out the fall schedule, moved to the spring, right? So we compared what was for fall and how it was going to be placed in the spring. 6 games, possibly 7 if you choose to, within that spring footprint that you would normally have for spring football. All schools will be done except 2 by April 17th. So some say, hey, having a fall football season and the spring season and the fall season, that's too much football. Well, ironically, we're having it anyway. The NCAA allows you 20 days. We'll start sometime in February and we'll end sometime around the 3rd week in April. That's what our football schedule is. So you count April 15th, May 15th, June 15th, July 15th, August 15th is the time that most student athletes will start to report. That's 4 months. Football season doesn't kick off to Labor Day. That's 4.5 months. That is enough time for our student athletes to recover, and that is enough time for us to be able to get a full fall season in, combined with an extremely shortened spring season, but long enough in order for us to crown a champion of the Southwestern Athletic Conference.
I want to dig just a little deeper, if you'd allow me, in regards to that. And as you meet with a lot of the Division I commissioners, obviously in football it's a little different. You have the Autonomous 5, the FBS, FCS. But with your experience on the Division I committee and building those relationships for various different reasons as a commissioner of one of the 31 conferences in America, I'm sure that you have seen what is taking place. As the NCAA calls them the Autonomous 5. Many people know them as the Power 5. Particularly the Big Ten and then the Pac-12 that counseled all fall sports. And for the Pac-12, they actually did, at least non-conference-wise, it seems, basketball as well, not starting off until January 1st. But you've seen, I'm sure, as many of us, with the coaches, to some degree, the parents, and the players voicing their displeasure of wanting to play. With that being said, how in the mindset, it seems for the most part what we've seen, if not all the part, with the SWAC, that everybody was mostly on the same page. Sure, there was some questions, there may even been some dissent, but at least it hasn't been vocal. You've been able to keep everything within family, if you want to put it from that parlance. But has the SWAC had to deal with athletes and or parents that thought about playing during this time or any time? How have you dealt with that, and have you had that experience? And if not, how do you believe that you were able to pull everything together to get people moving in the same direction?
No, we have not had the same response as the Big Ten, and quite frankly, the Pac-12 has not had the same response as the Big Ten. And I think that it's for a couple of reasons. One, our model is vastly different than their model. And really, when you dive into the Big Ten, I was waiting for this massive protest. It was 25 people there. You know, there are a bunch of teams in the Big Ten, and there's a bunch of parents. Only 25 of them show, which tells me that there's a far more amount that's saying we think that you did the right decision. And again, all that I've heard from the Big Ten, it wasn't so much the decision as it was the process of getting to the decision, which goes to your point. We involve student athletes from the beginning. We involve parents. We involve the athletic directors, the SWAs. We started with the football coaches all the way up to the president. So by the time we got to the presidents, we were able to give them the voice of all of our constituents. Everybody wants to play. I vowed that my daughter will not play sports. The best that I'm going to let her do is bowling. We've been throwing the football, Kenyatta. I miss sports, right? It's fall, right? We're supposed to be in camp. So let's get this thing started. Everybody wants to play. Everybody wants to see it. But health and safety, we've said in the Southwestern Athletic Conference, is always the #1 priority. I think the second difference is the majority of the people, in my opinion, that you're hearing from on the outside are thinking that their individual child and or student athlete has the potential to go pro. And that is the same within the Southwestern Athletic Conference, but our model is different. A lot of those individuals are wanting to play to get themselves in place to make money via the NFL draft. I'd have zero proof of this, but I firmly believe that the NFL is going to work with us now that the majority of us have moved to spring. And when you start looking at the student athletes within the Southwestern Athletic Conference, it's already been determined, and we knew this, that you're going to be able to get that year back, right? So if you are a pro prospect within the Southwestern Athletic Conference, you now have choices. Your first choice is you can play, and if you get to a certain point that it's not beneficial for you to play via the NFL, you can pull out. The second piece is you can play and get another year. The third piece is you can just sit out altogether and play in the fall and get an extra year of growth under that scenario. So we think that it gives the student athletes more of an advantage because they now have 3 options versus 0 if we didn't play, or 1 if we forced them to play a reduced season. So our student athletes, our parents, we've tried to give them a voice, and we've also given them multiple opportunities to be able to fulfill. At the end of the day, 99% of our student athletes, 99% of the student athletes in the Big Ten, they all are going to have to rely on a career other than football. It's just that we have a focus more so because we're FCS than they do. They all have this platform, and they're all going to Ohio State, Michigan, with the idealism that they're going pro. The majority of our student athletes are going to our member institutions with the idealism is that they want a degree and they're going to be able to make their money doing something else other than athletics. But we do a very good job of sending our student athletes to the pro level, and we've given them now 3 options to be able to exercise.
Appreciate that response in detail. With that, let me let Charles jump in here and ask a follow-up question or 2, and I'll come back as well.
Sure thing. One of the consistent questions that I get is how will the sports that start in the fall such as basketball, volleyball? How are their schedules, I guess, intertwined, if you will, in the spring now?
Well, another good question, and it is going to overlay, but we think we have a plan to where it's not going to be sport on top of sport on top of sport on top of sport. So basketball being a winter sport, and I know that you're going to have some questions. Dr. Kenyatta Cabell has already said he has some basketball questions for me later, so I won't ruin that piece of it. But basketball theoretically is going to start in November. Might be pushed back, we don't know. But what we're talking about is starting soccer first. Soccer is not going to overlap with basketball. Soccer, you're out there on the soccer field and or football field, depending on which institution, and basketball is on the inside. We can put our soccer dates on different dates as basketball. There won't be any overlap. Obviously, you have indoor track. Well, the indoor track student athletes, they're training in the fall, they're training in the winter, they're training in the spring, already in conjunction with these sports. So there's not going to be much difference with track. So we're going to start soccer first, and we're going to finish soccer sometime in the month of February. Again, we're working on these models. We're not quite sure where the start of volleyball is going to be, but we can tell you we know when the end date of volleyball is going to be. The end of volleyball is going to be somewhere in the week after football championship. So we can bag back for volleyball. What we don't want is for volleyball to overlap with basketball. As you know, basketball is in SWAC on Saturdays and Mondays, and then at the very last of the season as a Thursday. But what you have from a basketball perspective on Fridays and Sundays, you have to have 2 hours of practice time. So you have the home team, men and women, and you have the visiting team, men and women. So that's an 8-hour day. We don't want to put a volleyball on a day that's going to disrupt basketball. So we're going to back the schedule up to where volleyball starts at a time frame where basketball is ending. We can start it a little earlier so we can look at the schedule and see what basketball teams are on the road. Then those volleyball teams can start, and then we'll flip-flop it that following week. Those teams that are at home, they're now on the road, so that second group of teams can start, and then we'll start the volleyball season. As you know, we've overlaid football on top of basketball only for 1 week. And then you'll have that 1 week, and then there's a bye week for you to be able to go to the basketball championship. So there's a plan to where we will have the soccer championship, we'll have the football championship, we'll have the volleyball championship, we'll have the track championship, we'll have the softball championship, and then we'll have the baseball championship, all in consecutive weeks, where those sports are overlaid on top of each other, but they're not necessarily interfering with each other and stretching our resources. So there's still some work to be done with the schedule, but there is a clear path forward that we won't overwhelm our member institutions.
With regards to fans being able to attend games, how exactly does that work? Are states working with the conference in terms of what fan capacity might be, or whether there can be fans at all?
All of that's going to be a local decision. That's going to be and you say state, but it's going to go down to even a county decision. Could possibly go down to a city decision. I think we're going to learn a lot from those conferences that are pushing the envelope this fall about playing football. If they pull it off, that's going to be a tremendous model for us. If they don't, it's going to be lesson learned. But I can tell you, Charles, very clearly, if there's not a vaccine and if the numbers are not down by February, there's not going to be any sports anyway. So we're counting on the fact that there will be a vaccine. We're counting on the fact that the numbers will be down. We're counting on the fact that teams and schools and conferences are going to push the envelope, and we'll have those lessons learned. So our focus is to have fans in the stands. Might be reduced capacity. I think mask is going to be a common part of what we do. I had an opportunity about 6 years ago to go to China. Everybody had a mask. I had to ask, why did you have a mask on? Right? For them, it was about the weather. The sun doesn't really shine in China because of the smog. They might get 2 days of sunlight, every 2 weeks. I think that's ultimately going to be the norm here in the United States now. Even with a vaccine, we're still going to have to be cautious. But we're very comfortable in saying that we are 7 months away from the start of our football season. There's been so much that has been learned, even from a testing standpoint. The NBA testing, $10 a pop. 7 months from now, that's going to be widely available. We're going to be able to test everybody. It could be part of your ticket. I'm not saying that it will be. We're just throwing that out. As a part of your ticket price, there's a free COVID test. Come over here, get your rapid test, go on in the game. We don't know. I'm just throwing out these scenarios.
Sure.
7 months from now, who knows? We will adjust. Our plan is made up of days and weeks in order for us to adjust. And if we can't play, we're not going to play. I think we've proven that.
Mm-hmm.
Want to ask the last question about fall sports before we get into a little bit of basketball. Switch over with this. A lot of people have gotten bits and pieces of this, but I wanted to kind of get some closure and some final questions on that. As I asked about football, also in terms of soccer, it sounds like there's some flexibility in regards to the time. Obviously, January, February is cold, so as you're moving around volleyball and soccer and trying to put it all in place, you got to consider all those things. It'll be interesting to see how they kind of plays out in regards to teams that maybe a little northern versus the teams that are a little further south in regards to when they start. But the particular question I really had in that is a little more about the unique partnership, as you said, what the SWAC does at the FCS level than the Power 5 schools, but even in some ways, the unique partnership with the MEAC. The MEAC has recently also announced that it was moving its fall sports to the spring with the idea of playing football, moving into divisions, which I thought was fascinating in regards to talking about the SWAC being a leader in different ways. People have talked about the MEAC splitting up, but they wanted to do it, it seemed like getting the 14 teams, 12 in football, but now regardless, they're doing it anyway. And I guess COVID-19 had some push and pull factor on that as well. But the question I'm really asking is about the Celebration Bowl in the spring, or was that possible, or was the indication that the schedule did not provide room for the MEAC SWAC Challenge, at least at the beginning? Obviously, you have the singular game at the end that you may have be able to put that together. But did that provide the ultimate answer into this question? A lot of people kind of pulling back and forth about the Celebration Bowl. Is there any likelihood of that, or is that really outside of the fact that since you move it from the fall to the spring?
I think that everything is a possibility, but I have not received any indication that the Celebration Bowl is going to be something that's going to be heavily pushed. Just given the timing, given how close that it would be to the start of the fall season for the MEAC SWAC Challenge, the question would be, how much of the resource would you want to put in a Celebration Bowl, let's say being played mid-May, and then coming back at September Labor Day weekend with a MEAC SWAC Challenge? So again, we have not had those definitive conversations with ESPN, but gut feeling is saying Celebration Bowl is a possibility, but not a great possibility at this point in time. I can tell you from a Southwestern Athletic Conference standpoint, we're really focusing on giving our student athlete the most quality experience that we could give them without jeopardizing themselves from a physical standpoint or even a mental standpoint. Our championship game is second to none. I'm pretty sure the MEAC is going to experience that same success, and maybe it starts a new trend, in the MEAC. But at the end of the day, we want to go to the Celebration Bowl. But that SWAC championship means so much to our member institutions. Yeah. So, that opportunity for the Celebration Bowl is almost like icing on top of the ice. Maybe it's the flour on top of the icing on top of the cake, right? So we can deal with the cake and the icing without having that flour on top of it. So we don't want to jeopardize our model trying to force a Celebration Bowl. It gives us an extreme amount of pleasure to be able to have a championship, give them ample time to rest, and then come back for a full and vibrant, robust fall season.
Thank you for providing that framework to that question and answer there. Let's transition over to basketball. College basketball, if you would, using a sporting term, is on the clock, particularly the shot clock, if you would. We are reading constant updates on whether the sport of basketball will start on time in November. As we know, it usually starts non-conference wise around that time, or will it be delayed? And so I guess we can start right there. What are your thoughts in regards to the timing of basketball? Are there any updates in regards to that decision being made? And if not, what type of framework do you believe a decision will be made on when you can actually start, if you can start, men's and women's basketball?
Yeah, and talking to the NCAA officials, I know that they're going to the CLC, which is the Committee on Competition. The D1 Council ultimately will have to weigh in, and the Board of Directors will ultimately have to weigh in. And I anticipate some type of decision or analysis on that within the next 3 to 4 weeks. Again, we're kind of far out, but practice will open sometime in the beginning, first week, second week in October. I think it's the first week in October. Maybe it's even the last weekend in September. The 29th is coming to mind for some reason. So many times and dates now with these calendars moving with COVID-19.
Right.
So we still have 2 or 3 weeks to be able to get that decision, and I think it will make its way through the NCAA. This is just Charles McClellan speaking. This is not Charles McClellan, commissioner. This is not Charles McClellan, basketball committee member. This is not Charles McClellan, NCAA affiliated. This is Charles McClellan looking at where we are now as a nation. It's going to be difficult for us to start basketball, in my opinion, at the exact time. But I do think we can get a full and robust season. I think clearly we can get a conference season. So I think the worst case scenario would be a all-conference season, as the Pac-12 has already doubled down on. I think that can happen, and I think that can happen from a safe environment. You're not talking about 120 people as you're talking about with football, 85 football players, coaches, trainers, and media. For basketball, you're talking about 25. You know, it's going to be difficult to create a bubble, but you can create a bubble-like situation, especially within the Southwestern Athletic Conference. We're putting you on a bus, and we're busing you somewhere, and then you're going to play, and we're busing you back. So we could really create some bubbles without exposing our student athletes. What I foresee, Dr. Cavell, is from a non-conference standpoint that we will get started late, but we will have an opportunity to play some non-conference games. Here's something that I threw out to the SEC, the Sun Belt, the OVC, the Atlantic Sun, and the Southern Conference. All of us are kind of in a tight footprint. And I have not had opportunity to talk to the Big 12, but I would include the Big 12 in this scenario, that we can create a bubble and still get some of our games in. The Big 12, they have television contracts. The SEC has their own network, right? The Sun Belt has television contracts. So their contract providers are going to want content. I'll give you an example. Since you're in Houston, Texas Southern could very easily isolate in a bubble, take a test on Friday, quarantine Friday night, drive to U of H and play, have your pieces on the bus, and be back to Texas Southern. Nobody is in contact with nobody from the outside. U of H, the AAC can get their television contract. Check mark at least one game. Texas Southern can get their game guarantee. They could do the same thing at Rice. They could go to Baylor. They could go to Texas A&M, right? They could go to the University of Texas. So I think we can do some regional, I call it regional, but more so locally, where we can isolate, we can bubble, we can test that night, get the rapid test response back. Again, going to this NBA test that we're talking about. You spit in a cup. 15 minutes later, we have the results. We bed you down, or even we do it that morning, right? You spit in the cup, you clear, put you on the bus, you drive to University of Texas, play your game, you come back. Texas has their game, Longhorn Network has its game, Texas Southern has its game guarantee. We might not be able to do 10 or 11, but I can guarantee you we can do 4 or 5. That'll get you ready for that conference season, and everybody wins in that scenario. We haven't gotten there yet, but as we've led in football, that's something that we're going to try to lead with basketball as well.
Sure.
Fascinating insight, and you're hearing it here first in regards to, as you said, just the thought process. Nothing official there, with a lot of things and hurdles to get over, but giving you some insight in regards to how do you go through being innovative, being strategic, being tactical in regards to the framework and the leadership from a commissioner's perspective. So I really appreciate you opening up and sharing that, because you can't hit that everywhere with everybody unless there's an openness of people understanding that this is not something that's tied up, signed up, and ready to go. These are thought process that go back and forth with a lot of individuals to see ultimately, does it make the most sense with everything taking place with COVID-19 finances, and can you deliver on those expectations? So again, I appreciate you sharing that. Charles, if you would jump back in here.
Two things, Dr. Cavell. Quite literally, you said you can't get anywhere. You can't get it anywhere else other than the HBCU Sports Lab, because this is the first time that we talk about it. So that's a commercial for you. And second,
we're going to take that one. We're going to hold on to
that. And second, because we are so far ahead on football, see, there's still a lot of conferences that are dealing with spring football, whether we're going to play, whether we're not going to play, if we are going to play, what the schedule looks like, what the FCS playoffs are going to look like. You know, all of these questions are out there. We're past that. We're now focusing on basketball. And I think that's key, because these other conferences are now just starting to think about basketball, where we are 2 or 3 weeks down the road. So these are conversations that are just in its infancy stage. There are still conferences, as we talked about the SEC, they're still planning on playing football in the fall. So if they're planning on playing football in the fall, you know that they're planning on playing basketball in the winter. So this is something that's going to have to evolve given where the pandemic takes us. If we all can play basketball in the winter, fine, let's do that. But if we can't, now we have a roadmap, or at least an idea. Might be changed, might be massaged, but now at least we have an idea. We have a concept to be able to identify taking care of the TV partners, taking care of the member institutions, and by the way, the Southwestern Athletic Conference teams that need some additional revenue that we lost in football, there's an opportunity for that as well. You heard it here first and only on the HBCU Sports Lab.
No doubt about it. You know, Dr. McCullough, the natural question that comes up for me now is, does it change up the format of the basketball tournament?
You're speaking in terms of the NCAA tournament?
In terms of the conference tournament, will the conference, does it fundamentally change the conference tournament potentially being in Birmingham, or what possibly would it look like now?
We're in Birmingham, Charles. We signed a deal, so Birmingham put up resources. If nothing else happens, we're gonna be in Birmingham. It might just be a shoot around, but it's gonna be in Birmingham. You know, what we've said is that our brand is worth something, and Birmingham has stepped up and made a significant, and I can repeat that word, significant investment. And what that has allowed us to do is not lay anybody off in this COVID-19 environment. What it allowed us to do was give a record distribution back to our member institutions in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. What it allowed us to do was waive $350,000 worth of membership dues to the Southwestern Athletic Conference this year, so those schools can keep hold of that money. So that is a significant influx of cash into our member institutions, and it is because Birmingham has made a significant investment in the Southwestern Athletic Conference. So I can tell you, whatever we do with basketball, it will be here in Birmingham.
Sure thing.
But we are anticipating, but I can say we are anticipating the same format to our basketball tournament. We are not anticipating any changes in the format of our basketball tournament.
So we talked about coming in preseason. We talked about the end of it. What did that look like in terms of the tournament? I want to go back. This football season, when the early framing was taking place and decisions were potentially being made, the idea of a football media day, which kicks everything off in the fall, particular football, went to a virtual format. You know, we talk about being innovative, being, strategic. Is there any thoughts about moving to a virtual basketball, men's and basketball type of media day. I know there's been some back and forth with whether, how do you do media day for basketball? How do you elevate that? Usually it's in the middle of football, so people may not pick up on it early, but now you have the ability and you've learned from the fact that you could do these virtual media days. Is there any thoughts about potentially having a men's and women's basketball media day?
Well, ironically, the idea of a virtual football media day came from our plans to have a virtual basketball media day. And it goes back to the media summit that we had in which you attended, when we said we wanted to have a media day, and the media said, well, it's going to take away from football. You guys need to think about other ways of doing it. And what we came up with from your suggestion was to have a virtual basketball media day. So the plan was to have the men's basketball coaches, the women's basketball coaches, along with 2 student athletes. And what we were going to do was bring them into Birmingham. So as we had our fall meetings to start basketball, we were going to simultaneously have those individuals there to participate in media days. We had that already planned out for this year for basketball. So when we had to cancel the in-person for football, we just drew upon those plans that we had for basketball. So unequivocally, absolutely, yes, there will be a basketball virtual media day. I'm not clear on whether or not we will be able to institute it this year based upon everything that's going on with COVID-19. It was set for this year, but given the uncertainty of basketball and our ability to do it, we still have plans. We're going to meet as a staff to see if we can do it, but absolutely. So when we're back in person, when we're back doing everything as normal, there will continue to be a virtual basketball media day.
No doubt about it. Go ahead, Charles. Follow up if you would.
Well, I guess I'm just looking toward the future with the basketball tournament. And you mentioned Birmingham will be where it will be held. I was curious in terms of the format. Will we still be taking a look at the visiting team, the lower seeded team going to the home arena of the higher seeded team, things of that nature?
Ultimately, that's going to be a membership decision. The conference office, our responsibility is to put on a quality tournament. The membership chose to go from 10 to 8 to the top 4 teams hosting the bottom 4 teams. So that will continue to be a decision that will rest upon the SAC committee, which is the athletic directors and the SWAs. So if they determine that we want to expand it, we have the capacity to expand it. I can roll back as an athletics director. I got criticized by even some of my own staff. I did not want to go to the current format. Although when I say my staff criticized me, more specifically Mike Bailey said, Charles, nobody's gonna beat us at home, right? So if we can play at home, that's almost like a gimme for us. My thought process was a basketball tournament in March, upsets, all of that. But the fan participation, the length of the days had a lot to do with it. So I understood the decision. From my standpoint as commissioner, my viewpoint as commissioner is a little different than my viewpoint as an athletics director. As commissioner, my only goal is to put on a quality tournament. And the membership, and we've said this from day one, we're putting the leadership of this conference back to our membership. They have a significant say. So if they say top 4 plays the next 4, then that's the direction that we're going to go. If they say they want to change it, we're in perfect position to make those adjustments and put on a quality tournament, given whichever format that they choose is going to be best. So that's the long answer. The short answer is the schools will determine and decide.
Understood.
Another question I want to follow with basketball before I jump into esports, and then we'll bring it to the close at the top of the hour. I know your time is valuable, but wanted to talk about the rivalry weekend, and I know this is something that you're familiar with your previous stints, Prairie View, Texas Southern University as the athletic director and VP of athletics. with the scheduling, you had the alternating years where one of the teams, Prairie View, Texas Southern, were playing a game before the students got there. And maybe this will maybe become more complicated, or you have to even back it up to November, I guess, with the students when you're talking about the expansion to 12 with FAMU and Bethune-Cookman. Yes. But has there been any thoughts in regards to trying to work the schedule in such a way that at least rivalry games are set up in such a way that they're played when students are in session?
Well, first, before I answer that question, I want to send a shout out to Ralph Cooper. He just sent me a text message and said that the show is sounding and looking well. So I want to send a shout out to Ralph Cooper.
Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper.
Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper. My
No
bad.
doubt.
I apologize there, Ralph. I can tell you, with the addition of Bethune-Cookman and FAMU, what we've said is, and we've developed this committee, everything is back on the table. So if there are going to be changes, now is the time to make that change. But keep in mind, there are some major decisions that will have to be made. And in that decision-making process, we're going to have to decide, will we stay with 18 games? Will we go to 20 games, conference games? Some have suggested 16. I'm not in the 16 camp. My recommendation to the group is 18 and 20. If we stay with 18, then that's one thing. If we go with 20, then we're almost assured of having to play games prior to the Christmas break. If we play games prior to the Christmas break, then that frees that calendar up on the back end in order for us to make these changes. So the calendar and the games that you have normally seen, now is the time for us to get in and make those changes. But again, I tell you, it's going to go back up to the will of the membership. They will have a significant say-so in what that basketball schedule looks like. So we have a committee put together. We're constantly adding people. We have to bring in Bethune-Cookman and FAMU, obviously, on all of these scheduling changes. But you could possibly see significant changes in the way that basketball looks from a scheduling standpoint. We do know that rivalry games at the time that students are on campus are extremely important. And I can tell you that is a primary focus when we go back in and try to redo the schedule. But I cannot promise that all will be, good when it's all said and done, because there are a lot of factors that go into scheduling. But it's going to start with 18 games, 20 games, or 16 games, and then we'll be able to go from there. As you know, with the addition of FAMU and Bethune-Cookman, there are 22 games if everybody plays each other twice. So the initial model that we're looking at is, and I think we mentioned this on your show, although we're not going to have divisions in basketball, we're going to have a division-like schedule. So everybody that's in the West will definitely play each other twice. And then there will be some crossover games on the East. And they will be home 1 year, away the next year. So you theoretically are not, because we have 12 teams and you cannot play everybody twice, or even everybody twice and some once. There are going to be some teams that you have to play 1 year and some you have to play the other year. So there are a lot of decisions that will have to be made. We're starting to work on those now.
No problem with that. I do want to see if we can sneak one out of you. Has there been a decision made on whether who's going to move over to the West?
There has been significant conversation, significant studies. We are close to making that decision. We have to get that information to the Council of Presidents and Chancellors. But we anticipate within the next 2 weeks that we will be announcing who goes from the East to the West. But I can tell you, we've had a lot of fan feedback. We had some not there, put FAMU in the West, put Bethune-Cookman in the West. Not a whole lot of rhyme or reason about travel and all of the principles that we have to determine who goes to the East and West. But that's what we're all about, the fan participation and what's going to be most exciting. But quite clearly, I can tell you the tenets will be FAMU and Bethune will definitely be in the Eastern Division. It's going to be Jackson State, All Point, and Mississippi Valley that move to the West. Travel is going to be a significant piece of it. Student athlete time out of class is going to be a significant piece. We don't want them missing a significant amount of class time. And we always talked about competitive equity, but that's hard. As we've gone through this process, competitive equity is hard. One, just because you're number one this year doesn't necessarily mean you're number one next year. And a lot of what people talk to us about is football, but there are 17 other sports out there. So when you start talking about divisions, there's a lot of conversation, but I can tell you that the answer to it is starting to become clearer and clearer each day that we get all of this data. So we have a...
Oh, I almost had him slip. He wanted to share. Like, no, my team told me no. They said, hold on to a little bit. So
Wait, I can't tell you.
Close. I had him about this close to share, if you would. I was like, oh, can I sneak it?
You see, I leaned into the camera.
Prairie A&M University man, as you know, and I'm going to give a shout out to your fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi. You talking about smooth brothers? That was smoothly done.
Well, I can tell you that it will be data driven. The decision will be driven.
Well, you know, Mike is not here, but he'd love to hear that. That's his kind of thing. He'd like to say that. That's what we do at THG Agency. We do the data. So that close. As a promise, I know I'd get you out of here, but did want to give you a chance to do eSport. And, you know, as they say, Dr. DeVille, the dean of the HBC Sports, Rob Calloway here is the one who gave me that. And we now call Charles Bishop the professor. Professor Bishop he's in the doctoral program at Texas Southern University, and Mike is the professor. So we have Rob Calloway, who we nominated as the visiting adjunct professor. So he comes in at the end of the show and sneaks a little bit in. So if you don't mind, I'd like to allow him to ask at least one question. But the question I wanted to get in here with that is a little bit about esports. Wanted to give you the chance to talk about it. I know it came out there about esport and how SWAC was getting an esport and doing it from a conference perspective. People may not realize, but esport is $1 billion business. It's taken off in a lot of ways. And I say this so people know how real and valuable it is. ESPN is showing esports competition on the television, and you see a lot of the bigger brands out there, the Power 5 autonomy we talked about, having institutions building arenas and things of that nature. You have Shenandoah University, a private university in Virginia, that actually has a major. You have a lot of places having classes of esports, but they actually have majors and degrees in being a part of esports, the business industry, just to let people know how big it is. But this is the first time I've really heard, and I've tried to dig everywhere. You know how I do about my research. I haven't really heard in regards to a conference looking at development for the league, not just a conference talking about people come in and play from conference members, but the league taking the forefront of developing esports among its institutions, ultimately where you may have this league almost like you have football, basketball, starting out with the competition side, but that it has a chance to grow into what we see across the landscape with esports. If you would, talk a little bit about esports, why you decided from the SWAC perspective to get in esports, and what is that looking like, as I have a little sneak peek back there at esports, and we're going to play the commercial embedded within our show for you too.
Well, I think you've answered your own question. I think you did as good a job as I could to explain why. It's significant. It's the wave of the future. We wanted to be on the forefront, and I can tell you that our 10 presidents are all 100% on the same page. And we have 3 phases to this. And the first phase is what you just described. And a part of that, we're going to take the winners from each campus, and they're going to advance to the football championship and the basketball championship. So the same way we're going to crown a basketball champion or a football champion, we're going to crown an esports champion, right? So it's going to be at no cost. I know some other leagues will make you pay 40, 50, 60, 100 bucks. Air Force Reserve has stepped up for the Southwestern Athletic Conference and has assisted us in putting this platform together. So when you play with the SWAC, you got to be a part of the SWAC membership, right? Another benefit of being a part of the Southwestern Athletic Conference and its 10-member institutions, 12 next year. You're going to be able to play, and you're going to be able to win prizes. You're going to be able to win money. So we're creating this league, and we're going to create it from a standpoint to where we want our league to be as good as any other league that's out there. Maybe you are the winner of the SWAC, and now you can go on and compete on a national basis. Phase 2 is to actually implement this as a part of the curriculum at our 10-member institutions. So we're talking about taking this and creating, academic programs with it, where institutions can, have this as if nothing else, a certificate program, to where you can be certified as an esports professional, and you can go out and, continue to play. You can be the doctor of esports when you're on the games, or you can do other ventures on your own. And I think the third thing, Dr. Kenyatta, the third phase is just shutting the whole system down. And I think, in the infamous words of the Ghetto Boys, in those three phases, phase one is that we're knocking on the door. That's what we're doing now. The second phase is we're going to beat on the door, and that's the academic program. And the third phase is we're going to kick the door in. And that's ultimately what we're looking at. And we have the plan to do so. So, and I tell you about kicking the door in. I'll tie that into what we talked to our 10-member band directors. Why are we taking our bands, going all over the United States, not getting any significant resources for these Battle of the Bands? We have every major band, especially when you bring in Bethune-Cookman and Florida A&M, from Texas to Florida. We do our own Battle of the Bands. We keep our own money. We invite those people in to be a part of us, not the other way around. Why are we letting somebody else take our brand? Why are we letting somebody else take our assets and making money off of it, and we're getting what's left over? Let us take the money and give them what's left over. We're going to do the same thing with esports. As a matter of fact, we're going to do everything that we touch that way. And that is the beauty of having the 10-member presidents all on the same page. Nobody is going to be able to go outside of this conglomerate, because the resources are going to be given directly back to the member institutions. So you have all of these esports people. I've heard more esports information coming out ever since the SWAC announced. Could have been a coincidence, maybe not a coincidence. But there's been a whole lot of esports knocking on the SWAC door. I'm letting all of you know through the sports lab. All 10 member institutions are on the same page. All 10 presidents are on the same page. Those resources will be kept within the Southwestern Athletic Conference. So that's that phase 3 of kicking the door.
That's beautiful. Extremely important. I'll give a little plug. Texas Southern University, we already have 3 esports classes in the School of Communications on the books. So we're ahead of the curve, so watch out. You talk about what is taking place here. We're going to continue to push the envelope as long as they allow me to be creative in terms of the creative side of the curriculum development side at Texas Southern University. We're going to be in the forefront, especially when I have the ear of the commission, the Southwestern Athletic Conference.
You're being modest, so you're being modest, so let's go on and put it out as we already start working on the phase 2. We've already reached out to you at Texas Southern to start the curriculum development process. So when we talk about it, we're kind of like the fundraiser. You don't mention your capital campaign until you already have 50% of your dollars in. We're not mentioning these programs until we already have members invested. So when we talk about it, it's not a pie in the sky. This is something that we've already moved down the road on. So we're close. And you're seeing phase 1 now. We haven't necessarily talked about phase 2. But once you get excited about phase 1, phase 2 will already be in full swing. So it's not just Texas Southern. We've talked to other member institutions. Texas Southern is just in the forefront because we reached out to Dr. Cavell and Texas Southern about a year ago to help us with this process. So it's going to be exciting, and it should make a significant amount of resources for the member institutions, and it gets a different fan involved in, the Southwestern Athletic Conference sporting venture through this esports program.
So again, you heard it here first inside the HBCU Sports Lab, the HBCU Sports Lab right here. Go ahead with the visiting adjunct professor, Robert Calloway. Go ahead and ask your question, sir.
There we go. The SWAC has been at the forefront of esports for a long time, man. If I told y'all how many classes me and my homeboy skipped to play Madden football and college football and NCAA basketball. Oh, we've been ahead of the curve in the swag. I don't know what everybody else was doing. You know, they'll never catch up.
Robert.
Yes, sir.
We used to play Tecmo Bowl, so we can go way.
Exactly.
All right, so really quick, I didn't know I was gonna have the opportunity of talking to you, but you mentioned something that's near and dear to me because you know, I am a band guy, Bama State. Represent. Oh, by the way, did y'all see those nice shoes that Chris Paul had on last night or yesterday? Just phenomenal. But anyway, whole nother story. You mentioned the Battle of the Bands, and you mentioned the fact that the SWAC does actually have, you know, all of the best bands when you talk about HBCUs, with the exception of maybe one. I'll throw Tennessee State out there. They're independent. We could invite them maybe. But you talked about having the Battle of the Bands and keeping the money and then just dispersing the money to everybody else. So is this a real thing? Because I know that, you know, we don't have a Honda Battle of the Bands coming up because of the COVID situation. So moving forward, is this something that we could really be looking forward to, like a SWAC Battle of the Bands?
Yes.
How soon? How soon could we see that?
Soon.
Look at you. Look at you. Oh, poker face, man. I love this dude. Look, he's so good for the conference, but man, woo, he's cooler than the other side of the pillow. But hey, I think that'll definitely be a big move. Because you're right. I mean, the schools only get a certain percentage. You know, they have to share with schools from the CIAA, the SIAC, and the MEAC. And so with the addition of FAMU and Bethune, yeah, this could be major. This could be major. And I think, you know, if you need any help with that, let me know, because I'm all about that. I'm all about that.
Good, Robert. Well, and again, you know, I got my education from Prairie View, and I learned in my marketing classes and also my management classes. You make a lot more money when you cut out the middleman. So if I'm selling something, I can go directly to the manufacturer. I don't have to buy it from somebody that's buying it from the manufacturer. And this is that, you know, even when you start come down the football classics, you know, promoters are relevant, but we're going to start promoting our own classics, right? We're going to start developing these relationships with these stadiums, with these cities, going back to the Birmingham question. Right now, we have a deal with Birmingham to where in our deal, we have access to Legion Field. Not saying Battle of the Bands will be in Birmingham, but let's just say it is, right? We have access to Legion Field. I don't have to pay for Legion Field. So now the only thing I have to do, we have all 10 member institutions, 12 when Bethune-Cookman and FAMU comes in, to say, okay, we're going to sell on this date. We're going to go to Birmingham. We're going to have these bands at Legion Field. SWAC is putting it on. And now all of these ticket sales, all of these sponsorships will be divided by the 12. Why do I need a middleman when I have all of the assets, right? When I have all of the customers, why do I need the middleman to sell? I don't, right? And what we have gone to, and we had a meeting with the band directors as well, say, hey, would you buy this philosophy? And overwhelmingly, unanimously, they said yes, right? If we can control our own product, why would we not buy into it? So we can put 50, 60,000 people in the stands, and SWAC put this on. And, you know, maybe, you know, you talked about Battle of the Bands. I won't name their name, but it could be the Big Ben Battle of the Bands. The Big Ben can pay enough money for the
He snuck another one in there, the Big Ben.
You're right, that's you.
How you good?
We are now the standard. We have every major asset from Texas to Florida. So you talked about Tennessee State wanting to come in. They're going to have to actually come in. And if they don't want to come in, you know, it's not going to hurt our feelings because we got 12 of the best, right?
That's right.
There's going to be others that are going to want to come in. So you create this environment where people want to be a part of what you have. I don't foresee Tennessee State not wanting to be a part of it, because if you want to be and go up against the best, this is going to be the place that you have to come. So, again, yes and soon is the short answer to that.
I'll take it. No doubt.
So with that, Charles, let me let you follow up with the question, and then we have some that snuck in here. We'll see if we can get you maybe about 5 more minutes, and then we'll call it. Sure.
Well, just a comment, Dr. McClellan. Appreciative of you coming in as usual, very forward thinking in terms of where you want to move the conference, all the way from athletics to band. So I really appreciate you coming in and sharing what things could potentially look like going forward. So very appreciative of that.
Thank you very much.
With that,
and Charles, I want to go back and reference my ghetto boys. I realize that the English, the standard English, but that's Lil J. He said we knock on the door.
That's Lil J.
Right, and then we can't go in. Right.
That was Lil J. You quoted it correctly.
What other conference commissioner quotes the ghetto boys?
Only the SWAC. Only the SWAC. Hey, that's why we're ahead of the curve on everything, man. We got to see what you have to do is teach the other commissioners lyrics, man.
There you go.
This is just unbelievable. This is an unbelievable night.
With that, as we let you go, obviously you may have seen the Black College experience. It'll be interesting to see the ownership of that. Will they find a way to look at that and repackage that part of esports? They may have something there in regards to how they leverage that. That would be interesting to seeing that. But what I'll let you do, as we like to do, let you have a closing statement, if you would, in regards to questions that we may have not asked, or what you want to talk to the fans out there in regards to moving forward. And you can sit in there and tell us who's moving to the West.
No, I think you pretty much asked all of the questions that are relevant since the last time that we talked. And again, we just want to continue to think outside of the box to try to increase our brand and do some things to bring resources back to our member institutions. And that's our number one goal, is to strengthen our 10 member institutions, 12 and 2021. But I tell you what, Dr. Cavell, we signed a deal with CityJet. And there were several of our schools that used them last year. And CityJet actually has some smaller jets. I'm going to see if I can't talk him into this fall, where we have the MEAC SWAC Challenge in Atlanta. And I think some of you have been there. There's this fancy reception on that Friday night where all of Atlanta comes, the MEAC, the SWAC comes. We introduce the presidents, nice environment. It's at a hotel at the airport that is owned by Porsche. So there's a place there where you can go drive a Porsche and do all of this. So while we're on the rooftop, you hear all of the Porsche. So what I'm going to do, I'm working on this now. I am going to go to that reception on that Friday. I'm going to go to the airport, have CityJet pick me up. I'm going to fly down to Miami, Florida, and I'm going to partake in the Florida A&M Jackson State season opener. Have all of those festivities, hop back on the plane on that Saturday night to get back to Atlanta for the MEAC SWAC Challenge, and that's how we're going to kick off fall.
Oh my God!
When you see this fall football 2021 schedule, everybody is going to be excited. The addition of Bethune-Cookman and FAMU, again, that Phase 3 Charles Bishop, we're going to kick the door in.
I see. And if you need extra passengers on that jet,
let me know. Us three can be the 4 horsemen. We can join you and be like the 4 horsemen. Styling and profiling. Jet flying, limousine riding.
Look, it's going to be like that every weekend in the Southwestern Athletic Conference starting fall 2021, so get ready.
No doubt.
And the sports lab, like you said, the sports lab has to be there. You need somebody to make sure that you have your private conversations and record it so you can release. And somebody really needs to film this. So we might have to get Roy involved to film this, because we're talking about the commissioner, a SWAC date.
Right.
24 hours, 48 hours in the live of Dr. Charles McClellan. So we'll talk about that. So we can actually film it, write it, so we can make it legitimate of why we need to be on that plane. So just thinking outside the box.
Hey, but can you imagine again Florida A&M's entry into the Southwestern Athletic Conference as a game in Miami, Florida against Jackson State?
Crazy.
How big is that? And then it's going to be, our issue in scheduling is going to be not to overlay too many of these big games, on top of each other, because every week there's going to be a classic or a huge game, and most weeks it's going to be 2 or 3 of them. given where we are from a scheduling standpoint. So the SWAC Nation, the band, the whole tailgating, just get ready. It's going to be exciting.
No, I totally agree. We snuck it in the last week and talked about that a little bit as a triumphant as we talked about the spring schedule, and then we hopped once we finished that. Well, who would be the first in terms of what the fall 21, and we had to take some liberty and we moved somebody in the West. That's why I was trying to sneak it out. So my analysis would sound really good, purpose that I snuck in last week. But, we understand there's a time and place for everything. But on the serious note, when you talk about the rap, throwing in the rap framework and lyrics there with Ghetto Boys and the references you talked about, look at Luke Campbell in regards to him being on the board with the committee that's bringing that Miami FAMU, Jackson State game, to Miami. Luke's is at it again. He was on over there at HBCU Game Day with a great interview for folks to check it out. Go check that out with Tyler Carr on there and the work they're doing. Vaughn putting in a lot of great work. Stephen Gaither. But yeah, you're hearing it here. Sport first with HBCU game day in terms of what they do, but inside the HBCU Sports Lab right here, you hearing our exclusive interview with Dr. Charles McCullough. And with that, we'll let him move on with his schedule and appreciate him coming in here. Many of the followers jumping in here talking about the SWAC bands. They really like that. First football SWAC championship game had that battle of bands. I think they did one again when it moved to Houston. But taking it outside of the football championship game and having it independent is next level in a lot of different ways. So thanks for sharing that, obviously, with esports. A lot of big things, and then the addition of FAMU and Bethune-Cookman 2021 for some people, especially with what's going on with COVID-19, 2021 can't get here fast enough.
Can't get here fast enough.
Different reason, but especially if you're a SWAC fan.
Right.
I see why. So just want to say thank you for your time, Charles.
No problem. And I know you had a couple of questions. I'd be happy to answer them, but I did not necessarily want to gloss over spring. When you look at the schedule, there are some really good games, and we really do think it's going to be a year and a half since SWAC fans would have been able to see football. We anticipate, if, again, COVID-19 allows it to happen, a tremendous amount of fans and support. And I can tell you, we have had overwhelmingly positive response for the spring schedule. You can't please everyone. We understand that. But I can tell you the response that we've had has been in the high 90 percentile of overwhelmingly positive of wanting to see us play some type of football in the spring. So we anticipate spring to be extremely exciting as well.
No doubt. I think spring is going to be really exciting. We talked about last week and how it changed some things up. And so these are some ways that we might get some indication of how you change up the schedule in a way that may be beneficial. For example, when we stay right here in Texas and you looked at the Labor Day moving to the second game with Grambling preceding it, and it's just fascinating how you start talking about that matchup and how that changes that dynamic with Prairie playing Grambling first, and then playing Texas Southern. And you look at the compactness where all the games seem to be meaningful because of the division game, and you only got 2 non-division games. And it starts to elevate real fast.
Yeah, I do want to address that. I did hear one criticism. Andrew Roberts, he does a lot of social media searching. And I want to talk a couple minutes, well, at least 15 seconds to the Prairie View Nation. In that schedule, when you start talking about where Prairie View and Grambling fell on the schedule and where Prairie View and Texas Southern fell on the schedule, all of the major games, the institution chose those dates. That wasn't the conference office. So if you look at where schools are playing on that schedule, it was 100% the school told us where they wanted Bayou Classic, where they wanted Magic City Classic, where they wanted State Fair Classic, where they wanted Texas Southern versus Prairie View. And then we built the schedule around that. So I think that's a key piece that we wanted to get out publicly, that the member institutions had their choice as to when they wanted to play on the calendar once we presented it to them.
It's an interesting nugget. Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that. We do have exactly 5 minutes, so if there's anything else that we didn't ask you that were some things that were out there that you wanted to share or answer now, you have the time to do that. We have that little time. If you have that, like I said, we're gonna close it up at 7:30. So just wanted to make sure that you had plenty of time to put the necessary information out there, because people want to know in regards to what's going on with the SWAC.
Well, no, I would like to see that commercial, because we spent a lot of money on it on the esports.
We will make sure that you get it, and we'll get it in there. So we'll save time for that. So with that, we'll let you go. So we make sure we get it in that hour and a half time limit. So we'll make sure we play that at the end of the program to get that information in, and we'll close out with Rob Calloway and Charles Bishop. So thanks again for your time.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner.
Man, that was pretty awesome in a lot of ways. Like we said, we're on the top of it, so we got a couple of minutes. So let's go to Charles first. Any thoughts in terms of the dialogue, the interview that took place? What stood out to you the most? And then we'll let Rob answer the same question.
You know, that last little nugget that Dr. McClellan just shared in terms of the ADs choosing where they wanted to be within that spring schedule. So it's kind of interesting now. My mind gets to clicking in terms of what's the thought process in terms of where you wanted to be in terms of that spring schedule. So I thought that was an interesting little nugget there, because that is one of the critiques that some fans had in terms of whom they're playing whatever week.
Yep. And who they're playing in whatever week. I thought it was fascinating. And he said that all along, that everybody is a buy-in in this. So I think sometimes we have the wrong identity. And I guess they're the front person, and they're supposed to take a lot of their shots. But we think about the commissioner as almost this all-doing power. But anybody good in that leadership position gets input from everybody.
Sure.
They may carry the water and displace it, but I think him putting that out there is important for people to get even more context of what that looks like. With that, Rob, what stood out most to you?
Man, well, first of all, I got two things. First of all, the fact that the Magic City and the Bayou fell on the same weekend. See, those folks down in Louisiana get on my nerves, man, because they always try to act like the Bayou is so much bigger than the Magic City Classic. So, you know, COVID, barring COVID, a spring football game, we really go see whose fans go come out, like for real, like, you know. I mean, because usually we talking about the last Saturday of October for Magic City, and then the last Saturday in November for the Bayou Classic, and so that's crazy. But the other thing that I will say that I thought was right on point. I mean, when you talk about the addition of these two schools in 21, keeping the money in-house, man. You know, why outsource the product if you have the product? Like he said, he didn't say he's the dealer, but I mean, he is the dealer. Like he don't have to outsource or middleman the product in order to be able to get the money. And so, you know, like, he didn't want to mention the name, but yeah, we had the Battle of the Bands here that's been going on in Atlanta. The Honda, I'll say it, the Honda Battle of the Bands. You know, and it's been making so much money. When I tell you that they have every seat in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium and the Georgia Dome when they were doing it over there, the stadium is filled to capacity. And so the majority of the people are there to see those SWAC bands and maybe FAMU or Bethune, you know, I mean, because those, you know, they have fan bases, and large fan bases here in Atlanta. So to be able to keep it in-house and then just get some sponsors to buy the name, to buy, you know, the title sponsor, yeah, that is the best way to do it, because we know in 21 there will be no HBCU conference greater than the SWAC. Not that there is one, but, you know, we know that for a fact, as of July 21, there will be no HBCU conference greater than the SWAC. It just ain't happening.
Yeah, you're right. Set it down. That's pretty much official. Yeah. You can call it what you want. SWAC, Super Conference, this, that, and the other. But that part, as you said, in terms of where all the eyes are going to be, that's going to be without a question. You can see them with Dr. Charles McClellan as the commissioner putting things in place that he hasn't already in regards to showcasing how do you generate revenue about being a part of that brand, which I think is fascinating. AD has joined us, BCSN. They had a great show this past weekend where they went in on that spring schedule for talking about that. Very good framework with the sports wrap there with Brian and AD. Great work going in on those components. So I wanted to give a shout out. Jimmy Wilson came in. He made sure I had some of those basketball questions on point. So hopefully we were able to get his questions answered. So if we would, let's go ahead and play the commercial. And then we'll come in with our closing statement in terms of the esports. So everybody get a chance to see that commercial live right here in terms of what's going on before we shut it down officially today. While we're doing that, just want to shout out for all those following us. Thanks for jumping on and checking us out. Excited about that. Here we go. Thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavill, the Dean of the HBCU College of HBCU Sports, given that name by our visiting adjunct professor, Robert Calloway, as he does his HBCU report every Saturday. He's stretching it, going from that hour to hour and a half. So get up early Saturday morning, get it. He's going to get you going that weekend because not only is he going to give you great HBCU content from the only way that you can get it from somebody of his skill set, but also you're going to get some great music, get you really in the right mindset to get it going. I get a great workout to it. I'll tell you, some of my best works out Saturday morning.
Well, good, bro. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Hey, where's Mike? Is Mike here in Atlanta or did he come back to Houston?
He's on his way back. He's fighting the storm.
Oh, he's on the way back.
Yeah,
man.
Supposed to make it back, but I had to pause off and stop because they changed the directory of the storm.
I told Mike Saturday, man, to just stick around Atlanta, and he could have came over here. I would have met him and brought the equipment, and we could have just joined. We could have just patched in from here. I didn't think he was going back. My God. Woo.
Yeah, Mike a soldier for real. He in the Army, so it's hard to get him to slow it down. And I'm sure he probably was thinking twice about that, and he got that call from the office saying, hey, the storm down here, we could use your environmental engineering work.
Wait,
so he
that part.
He's on the clock. And so prayers to him and his family, prayers to everybody out there. Take care during the storm. Much love. Much credit again to Roy. Great job in terms of Florida Memorial and that contract work that you're putting in, and thanks for what you're doing for the show. Please stick with us. We know some difficulty with the sound. We're going to work it out. I think I know what it is, so we'll work on that before the next show in terms of what's going on with some of that buzz in the background. We'll reconnect our hookups that we got here. I think people got excited cleaning up, rearranged what was taking place there. You know how it happened. I ain't going to say no names, but, we got Professor Bishop, Professor Mike Washington, and that's Professor Charles Bishop. As we come to close, we thank you for listening to Dr. Cavill's Inside HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop on the seriousness. Every Tuesday, we kick off at 6 o'clock. We'll try to give you extended time, so stick around. So wipe out a couple of times, not just an hour, because we're going to give you bonus time when we get Rob Calloway in to give us his framework and take on the HBCU sports scene, a little bit about life as well, as he certainly spends it that way. We look forward to next week as we will discuss the latest news in the lab Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavill, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Follow us on Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1. That's on Twitter, where you can get direct information from Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Follow me, again, Dr. Kenyatta Cavill, DrKenyattaCavil, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can check us out on YouTube as well. If you can't catch it live, we'll have this part right there for you. As well as follow us on Facebook at Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, where we give you all the latest update information on HBCU Sports Lab. More to come. Make sure you get that app. Download that app, BCSN. We got more to come because we're growing stronger than ever. And you think the SWAC is taking over, watch what we do at BCSN. Dream big and continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon.
Course,
Dismiss.
Y'all do it too slow.
Are you hungry for authentic Caribbean food like jerk chicken, oxtail, red snapper, shrimp, tofu, and rasta pasta? Well, find your way over to Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta.
Them belly full, but we hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, open daily from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And on Friday and Saturday, we're open till 4 a.m. Come to Mango's and put some spice in your life.
Oh, we've got a good thing going.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta. For more info or directions, call 404-698-3992 or log on to mangoscaribbeanrestaurant.com. For instant coupons, text MANGOS to 313131.
Tell your mama hungry, papa hungry, brother hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, authentic Caribbean cuisines.